Hi everyone, good morning and welcome to our webinar this morning. As we get started, I just want to thank first of all our two guest speakers, Monica Singer and Genevieve Allen, and I'll introduce them shortly. And thank you to all of you for joining us as we get started this morning. So I'm very grateful this morning to have the opportunity to chat to two businesswomen who have had very varied and interesting careers. First of all, we have Monica Singer. Monica is a chartered accountant by background. She has had a very interesting background in that she started up and founded Straight, which is the electronic share-based trading platform that ultimately is used by the Johannesburg Stock Exchange today. On leaving that business in 2017, she now works for Consensus, which is the world's largest blockchain company, which is something that is becoming far more important in every one of our lives and will do so in the future. Monica also serves on a number of advisory boards in the cryptocurrency spaces and a number of other tech-based companies, and very importantly, gives back to the profession in that she is a professor at the University of Johannesburg who helps new auditing and accounting professionals understand blockchain and its uses. Monica, thanks so much for joining us and for your time today. I'm sure there's going to be much wisdom shared from your side. And then secondly, Genevieve Allen. Genevieve has a lot of experience across the educational sector, having worked for a privately run institution as its CEO for many years, and then having left that, started her own business also in the education space, but at the other side of the spectrum. Genevieve owns the largest franchise in the sort of aftercare and school care business after hours, Club Engage, and we're very lucky to have her with us today to also share some insights in how to make that transition, but also how to equip women to own and run their own businesses. So a very warm welcome, and we're going to kick off now with our questions. So perhaps, Monica, to start with you as we get going this morning. You've had a rich corporate career. You moved to a very different business in moving to Consensus. And I think, what are some of the key lessons that you've perhaps learned on that journey of setting up a business and now moving to a completely different industry? And reflecting on that, what insights could you share with all of us around your journey?
So if you look at my whole career, there was always a specific purpose that I wanted to achieve. So from the time I was a little girl, long story, I won't go there. I always thought that I could make a difference in the world by fighting corruption and fraud. And so if you look at what I did, I wanted to be a chartered accountant. Why? Because supposedly accountants, as auditors, we are there to prevent fraud and corruption. Little did we know that that whole technique is failing. So I became a chartered accountant. I became the technical director of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. Then I went to work for the World Bank. Imagine, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to save the world. Yeah, nobody can save the world, sadly. But then I came back from Washington and I was asked to transform the financial markets in South Africa from paper. You know, if you look at 30 years ago, when you traded on the JSE, you would get a share certificate with your name, an actual piece of paper. And then normally the payments were by checks, and there were lots of messengers running around town delivering these checks and share certificates. Imagine the mess, the fraud, the delays, the inefficiencies. So I came in and I took all the paper out and I went completely digital. The key lesson there was that when they asked me to do this project, I said to them, but why would I do this project? I'm not a project manager. I'm not an IT person. I don't know anything about the stock exchange, you know? So actually what I've learned is that the best way to introduce innovation is to ask someone that doesn't know anything about the current scenario to do it, because then you are not attached to what was created. So when I started working to create the Central Securities Depository, which was needed straight to do the what is called delivery versus payment, the swapping of electronic shares with electronic cash, that required someone lunatic like me that was going to tell the market, sorry, I don't know what you're doing, because the brokers especially kept on saying, we've been doing this for 100 years. And I said, I don't care. What you're doing is rubbish. So we need to change it. So it was good that I wasn't aware of the current structures, because with my personality of research, I went into the world and studied what other markets had done, and I brought that idea into South Africa. But it requires, when you implement a lot of change, it requires someone that has very thick skin. I call myself a rhinoceros, because just imagine that everybody was against it. Imagine I was changing something that they've been doing forever, and I was implementing something that was going to change the world for the better, and it did. South Africa, when I started the project, was categorized as the worst emerging market, worse than Venezuela and Russia in terms of operational and settlement risk. After 10 years of working in this project and implementing it very successfully, we were categorized by the World Economic Forum as the top financial market in the world amongst the developed countries. So it was worth it. And then I moved after 20 years of running straight, I moved into blockchain, which is a complete new industry, complete new technology. And with all the lessons I've learned of running straight and implementing such massive change, I was very easily able to move to another complete change. It was like telling the candle makers that electricity has been invented. We're still at the stage in the blockchain world where I give presentations, especially to the boomers, and they look at me like I'm smoking some incredible dacha. Nobody believes everything what I say. So I had to develop, once again, incredible skin. The big difference, was that when I was the CEO of Straight, I had the backing of the stock exchange and the 4 big banks who were the owners and sat on my board. In blockchain, I have no backing. I have, yes, I work for the biggest blockchain company in the world, but there's no pressure in the market to make it happen. So this is going to happen. This new technology is going to happen in a different way. It's going to happen by what I call it the grassroots, top down up. The market will start implementing all these changes, and then those that are holding on to power will say, what happened here? So when I'm explaining, as you can see through my whole career, it was really to defeat fraud and corruption. And that's why I moved to Straight. Then I moved to blockchain, because I believe that the only solution for the world financial markets is the blockchain technology. And that's why I'm working in blockchain. And it really took a lot of courage, because being the CEO of Straight, I was like a queen in a castle, big corporate, big rewards, bonuses, etc. And I was a queen. I had 200 people under me doing everything for me. I was just a little queen. And then I joined this company, Consensus. I call it, I joined the plebs, because we, the plebs, are trying to change the world of the corporates. So do you understand that I had to then not only change the way I dress, the way I talk, the fact that I had to learn to do everything. I don't have a PA. I used to have a PA that did everything for me. I do everything myself, learn to do techie stuff, everything. So it was a massive, massive change. But as you can see, if you know your why, the how, it comes very easy. So I stuck to my why, and all along my life, to say one day there's going to be technology that will change the world for the better. I thought it was, Straight would do that. But Straight, it still did not achieve what we wanted to achieve. And then we look back. Why? Because anything that is centralized, anything that requires reliance on intermediaries, it has been proven to fail. So blockchain technology is decentralized and requires no humans. It's based on code. The code is what is law. And therefore, that has got a better chance to get the humans out of the way, which are the ones that perpetrate the fraud and the corruption, and then have very transparent, decentralized technology that prevents anybody from cheating and stealing and whatever. So that's why, as you can see, my why has been consistent since the time I was a little girl, which I also want to add. a very quick example. When I had to choose my first job after articles, I had two options. One, to work for Anglo American, the other one to work for the Institute of Chartered Accountants. The Institute paid me half the salary that Anglo was going to pay me. But I chose the Institute. Why? Because I didn't understand in which way I was going to reduce corruption in the world working for Anglo, but I could see how I could make a massive difference setting the audit and accounting standards. So the money wasn't important. But the lesson is that the money comes. If you stick to your passion and your purpose, then everything falls into place. But long story short, in a nutshell, you need to know your why.
I think that's such valuable advice, Monica, and it seems that that's very strong for you and a real passion, and it's driven your decisions. And Jen, coming round to you on that, I guess we could say education is your passion since you've spent a lot of your career in it. But maybe adding on to that in terms of your journey, what are some of the key lessons that really helped you also perhaps make that transition from being in a corporate running a business to actually then moving and owning your own business and helping other people own businesses because you work in a franchise model with a lot of your sort of schools you work with and the operators of your aftercare. So I'd love to get some insight on perhaps that purpose and why, and has that also stayed with you through your journey in terms of what you've been doing in education?
Yeah, lovely discussion there from Monica. I resonated with so many things that she said, specifically around the fact that the rhinoceros, and that you definitely have to have very thick skin because the world is full of people telling you that things can't be done and that people won't change and people won't buy in, etc., etc. I think for me, one of the trigger points for me in terms of leaving corporate was a real understanding that one of the best ways for women to get ahead in business is for them to run their own businesses. It's an unfortunate reality that women are often the workhorses in work environments. In the education sector, it's very prevalent. We see majority of staffing are female, yet the majority of managers are men. And that potentially is not by design, but it is the way things transpire. And I think there are many industries, like you guys come from the finance space, very similar type of statistics to support that. So that was one of my light bulb moments as I developed in my career, was although I had a senior position, being on an exco of a listed company, etc., that wasn't something that was necessarily going to be afforded to the majority of people. And I was fully aware that even in my own position, that some of that was by luck and circumstance, not through skill and pizzazz. Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time and the door opens for you, but the system's not designed for equity around everyone. So going into this business of mine, one of my key drivers was about ensuring that we can set women up to be, owners of their own destiny. Even if it's the CEO of a small space, you're still the CEO of your space. And my business is very much focused around women in business, empowering them to set their own businesses up. And while I run an aftercare and holiday care business, I'm actually a franchise business that's predominantly owned by women in terms of the sector we're in. I think critical for me in terms of information that I always share with people thinking about their own businesses is ensure that you research your idea. I think there are a lot of people out there that have aspirations of running their own business, but do not determine that a marketplace actually exists for the concept. So the research element is absolutely critical. And I think people don't always understand what it means to do research. We really need to be talking about customer-led, demand-led concepts. But, in the words of Steve Jobs, don't ask your customers what they want. They don't know. So you don't need to ask your customers what they want. You need to be clear, though, that the service that you're providing, that there is actually a need for it, and that people will be prepared to pay the premium that you're going to charge for the additional value that you're going to add. So getting those mechanics right for me is critical. I think the power of starting your own business at a later stage in your life as opposed to earlier is leveraging your social capital. And I always say to people, who's on your Tupperware list? Who could you contact? Who can you phone? who knows people. We're in the education business. Everybody has children, or everybody knows people with children, who's on that Tupperware list. And don't be afraid to leverage your social capital. Power of weak ties specifically doesn't have to be people you know, it's people who know people you know. And if you're not prepared to put yourself out there in terms of doing a bit of hustle and markets and selling yourself and your concept, you'll never be successful. So those are my kind of lessons. I came from a very cotton wool type of corporate environment where no one had public profiles. We were MDs of businesses, but there wasn't really a public profile built around individuals on purpose. And I don't think from a negative perspective, obviously you want customers coming towards the brands, not the individuals. So that was a massive change for me to actually have to build a public profile and be okay with it. And again, if you're going to start your own business, if you're not comfortable with that, I don't think you can be successful. So those are my key lessons, Kiri.
Great, Jen, and I think that that's so true, right? And the ability to put yourself out there, the ability to sell, these are things that I think as you transition from running a larger business to perhaps having your own business, it was really interesting. Yesterday I attended a presentation on Climate Finance Week here in Ireland, and it was a panel of women entrepreneurs that are surging ahead and providing some really interesting solutions to social issues. And so much of what you've both said, why, understanding and researching your idea, these are all things that are so relevant. Monica, perhaps coming back to something you said, you spoke about innovation, and I think, you know, our previous webinar, we spoke about digital transformation and digital leadership, and leading in digital spaces is one of those key tools today that people have to actually think about. Um, and I love that you had said that innovation is sometimes, you know, when you put someone into a situation that they actually don't know, they're more likely to question what's going on. And how do you see innovation playing a role with blockchain? And what are some of the lessons you're learning with consensus as you moving through this, navigating the waters, I guess, of really something new that people are still struggling to understand and getting their heads around? And how do you lead that? And how do you encourage, you know, people in your teams to actually keep going and stay resilient in the face of sometimes, I guess, headwinds when you're trying to deal with new people in a marketplace who don't really get what the product or service is really about yet? Monica, you're just on mute still.
Sorry.
Oh, you've
You've
muted
pressed
yourself again.
Sorry. Okay, I'm back. One lesson that I learned is if you are the most intelligent person in a room, you are in the wrong room. So as the CEO of Stripe, a company I created, I did everything. And it was a startup. So as I employ people, I started delegating. But at the beginning, you know, it was me. So I got bored because in reality, I knew the stuff, you know, and eventually once you created it, it's the day-to-day running. And I'm much more a researcher, a creator than a day-to-day maintainer. So I had to diversify, you know, my activities when I was at Straight because I really was bored. And now I moved to a company, Consensus, remote work. We are in 40 countries. The average, you have to understand, I'm the oldest person in the company. I don't tell them, but I am. You know, even in the surveys, they don't show my age. You know, like anybody above 60 doesn't appear in the internal survey. So I wonder if they know how old I am. So, okay, doesn't matter. The point is that now I work remotely in 40 countries. So imagine the diversity, majority 30-year-olds, majority techies, okay? I'm a chartered accountant. So they call me even analog because they don't find me digital enough. Okay, so it's really funny. The point is that in the rooms that I sit, which is all, as you can see, is remote, I am the dumbest in the room. I really am. Okay, so what I do is that I catch up. You know, let's assume I'm in the meeting and they talk something I don't understand. I make sure I Google it, I learn, whatever. So the one thing that has kept me, my kids say that I'm more millennial than they are. I think it's because I've had this incredible thirst for knowledge. So like Genevieve was saying, I'm a passionate researcher. So I'm constantly trying to learn to the extent that blockchain will affect everybody in the world. You don't know yet, but it will. And my passion started 6 years ago in this industry was to learn about everything from art to music to finance, supply chain, you name it. I've been studying new forms of money. And that's why I became a professor, because of my passion to learn everything. The truth is that anybody coming into this new blockchain industry now will not have the ability to know everything. You will have to choose which industry are you in and in which way does it affect you. Then the other thing, Kerry, very important, people must know. In the past, we thought we needed to get a degree to go to university to learn. Now, everything I know, everything, I learn on my own in the internet. I don't have a degree. My only degree was 40 years ago or 35 years ago as a CA. After that, I didn't get any more degrees. I don't want to get degrees. I want to be able to implement change in the world. So there's no time to go and obsess about all these degrees that people think they need, and I'm saying that because my husband is a doctor, and a doctor, PhD. So he studied his whole life and he's still studying. I don't know why, but that's fine. The point is that you don't have to worry about a university degree. Everything's available in the internet. The only thing you need is your own ability of saying, I want to dedicate myself to learn, and never be embarrassed to ask questions. Like, yes, the team at Consensus, super clever, super, really, I can't tell you the brain power of these kids. And I'm not shy to say, guys, I don't get it. Please explain to me, and I don't care what people think. And I did that even when I was building Straight. Remember, I built Straight without knowing how the markets work. So whenever someone was trying to use fancy language they were trying to confuse me, I was saying like, stop, explain, plain English. If you cannot say it in plain English, you don't understand it. So what I'm saying to you is that you mustn't feel intimidated by anything, because by asking questions and by learning, you will find all the answers. But you have to get rid of your own ego, because a lot of people don't ask questions because they feel embarrassed. They don't want people to think, they're going to be judged. I don't care if the kids call me analog. That's fine, because I still take notes in paper. That's fine. You know what I'm trying to say? I don't care. And I never cared even when I built Straight, when the brokers were absolutely aggressive against me. They would call me this little girl. They will introduce me in a conference. This little girl is about to give you some information about how she's changing the world. Like, really? So like Genevieve says, it's very hard to be a woman in corporate and in the world. But I think that if you have the ability, I connect to courage. If, as I said to you before, if you know your why, it doesn't matter the how. So people will throw stones. They will, even, when I was building Straight, the banks that didn't want Straight at the beginning, they would go to the press and publish articles about me that I didn't even know about me. They invented stories, So did I go and say, I'm resigning, I'm offended? No. Do you know what? They did the most horrendous things to stop the project, and I carried on. And you know what? I always said, when life throws lemons, I made lemonades. So all these lemons that these banks and brokers, everybody was throwing at me, I thought, whatever, carried on. And today I can die happy that I left a legacy of something that made a massive difference in South Africa. And now I'm doing something I'm super passionate about, applying those same learnings. The difference is that I don't work in such a big corporate anymore. I'm just, a simple employee, which is great because I'm not responsible for 200 people,
Monica, you make such a valid point there, right? This lifelong learning, sort of embracing learning. And today there's so many different tools that we can harness learning with. And I think maybe, Jane, to come to you on that point, it's obviously really important for you very much to also keep up to date with what's going on. But you also mentioned earlier, it's that thing of a responsibility to equip your franchise owners with also the skills needed to run a business, which some people may not have done before. So how do you sharpen your learning edge? What drives you, and how are you finding keeping up to date and taking lessons from the market and this lifelong learning approach? And how does that help your franchise owners to do more in the work that you carry out in the business you run?
Gary, I think for me, first of all, I'm incredibly blessed because working in the business school environment allows you to have access to this amazing faculty and have the opportunity to sit in on faculty sessions in terms of the role that I play there as a learning process facilitator. So I suppose I have an edge on other people in terms of the fact that that's a benefit of that role that I play and the level of the faculty members that we work with who do all the hard slog. They build the research and they present it, and I have the opportunity to review that with them. So that gives me a little secret hidden edge. But on top of that, I also am an avid reader. And more than that, like Monica, I'm an avid YouTuber. So I love TED Talks, and I'm always like talking to people about TED Talks as a very simple mechanism that any man in the street can. LinkedIn Learning has got amazing tools. So why would you not be using all of these facilities that are available mostly at no to low cost to upskill yourself continuously? So I really do the dummies version of upgrading skills all the time in terms of what the man in the street is working with, and also an opportunity for people to constantly create networks. So I believe in conferences. I don't believe in conferences that cost 20,000 Rand a day. I look for opportunities to attend sessions and seminars like this. There are people that are dialed in today listening to us, and I would be the type of person who's looking out for these types of opportunities to upskill myself through other people continuously. So a mixed bag, but as I say, through the business school, that's definitely the cheats route to really keeping up to date with the latest information that's credibly researched through the faculty members. And then the second benefit of the business school environment that's afforded me as someone who runs a relatively small business is that we work with corporate clients. So I have constant exposure to different environments, big mining groups, international travel companies, etc., and observing how other companies operate and how cultures are built with employees, etc. These are lessons that I can bring into my franchise team. But I'm with Monica. I've assembled a team of amazing franchisees who have an array of backgrounds, from chartered accountants to lawyers to educational psychologists, and I learn a lot from them. So I also believe very much in taking the approach that I'm learning from my franchisees as much as they're learning from me. So that thing around really understanding who's in the room and what they bring to the table is critical.
I think that's such a good reminder to all of us. And Monica, you made the point too, right? Learning from millennials and saying, well, I don't understand and I've got to ask the questions, but also that issue of simplification and like bringing it down to what is understandable to people is really, I think, important in new technologies. Monica, perhaps to
May
move to
I?
you. Yes,
Sorry, Kelly,
please go
before we
ahead.
move, I also want to add something very important. I have become obsessed with podcasts. They are podcasts of every topic. You know, in my industry, I have like a whole list of podcasts I could listen at any point in time. So when I'm, brushing my teeth, when I'm going for a walk, when I'm in the car, I don't listen to radio anymore. Radio is very, with everything that's going on in the world, it's really negative. So if you want to use your time that you have for good information, connect to podcasts. I'm going to give you a little advert of Spotify. Spotify is amazing, $60 a month, really, and you get access to every single podcast, and you can connect and listen all the time. They really are amazing. So I encourage people to change their mindset, not to be connected to the news so much because they're so negative, and you don't have any influence with what's happening in the world. You just get depressed and you want to start crying every day. So in order to balance this terrible evil energy that is happening currently, what I do is I try to keep focus in trying to learn on something positive that I feel that I can influence the world for the better. Because if not, I think we're all going to go a little bit mad because we don't know how to, we don't have control over what's happening in the world. And therefore, our only thing that you can, Rumi said something fascinating. Rumi, the poet, many, many years ago, he said, when I was young, I wanted to go and save the world. And then when I became older and wiser, I realized that the only person I can save is myself. So I can assure you that I had to learn that journey because, as you can see from my whole story, I used to say, even if it kills me, I'm going to achieve this goal of saving South Africa. Really? Ha! It nearly killed me. So I now learned that in order to live a little bit longer, Belinda, we have to now look inside and say, how are we going to save me, after using all this energy to raise a family, to change the world, the only one I can really save now is me. And therefore, I'm just trying to say, don't connect to the negative energy because you can do nothing about it except cry. So I'm saying use the time that you have to learn all the time. And there are no excuses because everything is available.
And Monica, you make such a valid point there. I think it's about using those pockets of time sometimes to really keep yourself like up to date on areas that interest you. And both podcasts and TED Talks are fantastic ways to do that today, and so easily accessible with the technology that we have available. And I think just do a little bit of advertising. We are going to be actually hosting Jen and Monica in a podcast, which we'll be releasing in the next couple of weeks. So you can watch out for that and maybe add them to your playlist. And it's such an interesting area and growth in terms of sharing knowledge and working very differently with technology. But Monica, I just wanted to come back to something you said. You speak about working in this remote and very hybrid company, and most of us have gone through this incredible change in the last couple of years from being in person to online to working in how do we get this right and what works remotely and how does hybrid really work. And perhaps I'd love you to share some of the lessons and insights you've got from working in this very dynamic environment where you almost don't have, there are no offices, and how do your customers and people you speak to perceive you, but how does the team really get going and work together? I think that could be a really interesting point of view.
So we've been remote for the last 6 years when the company started. So when COVID hit, for us, it was like, okay, whatever. We carried on as usual. The whole world had to get adjust to this remote work. And we are still remote. So people are funny. They phoned me and said, oh, we're going to, because it's a registered company in the US. They said, oh, we're visiting the US. Can I go and visit the head office? I said, no, there's no head office. There's no building. There's no filing cabinet. There's no nothing, So people really, you have to start breaking in your head that you need to go to a building. Like every stock exchange in the world has a building. What for, people, when everything is electronic? So hopefully what COVID did was to teach people that you can have these meetings all the time. So we do have meetings all the time. And then once a year, what the company does is it has a retreat. And in the retreat, you get to hug people and get to, the person that you work the whole year, you get to touch them. For me, it's so important to see people and touch them and see that they're there. So yes, the human aspect is still very important, but it's not essential. We are much more productive by being remote than being in an office that, you waste so much time doing nonsense. And therefore, in this remote world, what we have been able to achieve is that the meetings are productive. You meet, you go for the actual business. It's not meeting for the sake of meeting. You have an agenda, you summarize it, and then you have the way forward. So the way that consensus operates is to ensure that we still have once a year that we get together, but the reality is that we all love working remotely because what it gives you is massive flexibility. I can sleep until 8 o'clock in the morning and start working at 10 if I want to, or whatever. I can do whatever I want. It's really, how do you pay for freedom? it's more important than the salary, the freedom, the flexibility, the trust that the company has, that they don't need to go and check if you're at the office, and normally these kids come to the office and they play games or look at Facebook. In a remote only work, you are able to define the deliverables very clearly, and then you trust the person that is going to do it, and then they have OKRs, which is the measure of deliverables, and you have to prove that you deliver, and you can deliver it anyway, anytime, whenever you want to. The only challenge, I have to be honest, was once we lost a client because we normally get dressed in hoodies, and t-shirts or whatever. So I presented to one of the central banks. we lost the client because the accusation was that we didn't take them serious because we were wearing a hoodie. And I thought, oh my God, really? Oh my God. So yes, learn your audience. Not everybody will tolerate that you're now chilling at home, working from your home, and therefore if you want to work in your pajamas, you can do it. You have to be a little bit mindful of your dress code because it gives the wrong impression when, that is the funny story. Yeah.
Monica, that's why we put on our lipstick and our makeup today, girl.
Exactly. Which never happens.
Both of us.
Exactly. Did you say, oh my God, I don't recognize that?
When I came to the computer, my husband was like, oh, you're so dressed up for work today.
I know.
So sometimes I guess it's learning that the mindset of people that we are sometimes dealing with in our environment hasn't shifted, and that perception and how you look still does count online. And we often used to say that in our business school final presentations, how you look has an impression on who you're delivering to, because you want to align the kind of look and feel you want with your audience. And it's something to just remember in the online world, that it's still necessary to do that sometimes, and not just to relax too much and go into the work from home environment. I will just say that having still going into a corporate and into an office now, is the dress sense has definitely declined since pre-COVID days. And but kind of taking pride in what you look like online is just as an important lesson as sharpening your learning edge sometimes, especially aligning your business to that client that's online. And if you want to get the best out of them, I guess that's important. And maybe we've had some really great nuggets of insight, but maybe a last question before we see if anyone from the floor would like to ask you any questions is, if you reflect in terms of the journey you've been on in life and your career, and you had to give your younger self a piece of advice, I think we can all take lessons from the journey we've all been on. What would that advice be? So, Jen, I might start with you on that question and say, if you had to reflect back on everything you've achieved and where you are today, what advice would you give yourself if you were starting out again in your career?
I think the thing that comes to mind as you ask that question, Kiri, is empathy is more important than you think it is what goes through my mind, because I'm extremely task orientated, and I believe that you're valued on your outputs and your delivery. And I was more gung-ho about that when I was younger. And I've now learned that building those relationships with people and really understanding how to build connections. And I think it links to the earlier discussion on hybrid work, and how when we're working in a hybrid space and managing hybrid teams, how much more important relationship building is. Picking up the phone, having a chat with someone, checking in on them, etc., which you would almost do intuitively if you were sitting in an office. You would be doing that through body language, through coffee chats, etc. You now need to be much more mindful about intentional communication with people. So definitely for me, empathy is more important than what you think it is what I would be saying to myself if I was 22 years old and doing the job that I was doing at that stage. And I believe that in working in the business that I'm in now, and even what I said in the earlier conversation about being a lot more focused about the challenges around women in business, I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't naive, but I wasn't as aware until I'd gone through my own process. And again, building empathy into that and understanding what the real challenges for people are in a work environment. And I pride myself on the fact that the business that I run is actually providing flexibility for people and empathy for working mothers and allowing them to have that free space while their children are being well looked after. So all of those pieces come together for me in as Monica said, what is the why? Why are we doing this? So supporting women in business through either owning their franchise and or the actual provision of the service that we do, for me, all ties together in that empathy framework. So yeah, that's would be my one sentence to myself. I could write a book, but we'll stop with a sentence.
Well, you never know, hey? A book might be
I
a
know,
good one
next project.
for the next project, right? And like sharing your wisdom and knowledge.
I see Erica is on the line and she's trying to convince me to do a doctorate, so I've got to pick my projects.
But Monica, perhaps to come to you, you've also had a very varied career and a rich career. If you look back and had to give advice to your younger self, what do you reflect on in terms of the lessons you've learned, and what would you say to a 22-year-old Monica today?
I would say love yourself more, because I didn't. I sacrificed myself. I all the time thought that I could do, like I said, I used to say, even if it kills me, I'm going to do this. And it's nearly killing me because I've got cancer from high levels of stress all my life. You know, they did a study of the Fortune 500 companies, women CEOs, and a vast majority of these women have breast cancer. So I can confirm that my cancer comes from high levels of stress, consistent all through my life. So I should have never said, you know, I'll give you an example. Once I had a Bell's palsy. I don't know if you know what it is. It's an inflammation of the nerve that paralyzes your face. I went to the doctor holding my eyes like this. I walked like this because my face was paralyzed. And the doctor started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? He says, you must be the most crazy woman I've ever met that allowed Bell's palsy to advance to the stage that you could not open your eye. If you had come to me earlier, I would have given you an anti-inflammatory and this would have ended. But I was too busy working, people, to go to the doctor. By the time I went to the doctor, it took me 6 months of physiotherapy to recover my face. Really? If I tell you I had brain tumors, I had thyroid tumors, now I've got bone tumors. Really? And I survived, and I'm sure I'll survive a little bit longer. But the point is, it was all because I was too focused in trying to save the world. What about saving me? Who in this room is doing saving you first? I'll give you an example. I raised a family. The day before I went for a brain operation, I went to the supermarket. I cooked so that when I was recovering, the family would have food in the fridge. Really? Instead of like saying, oh my God, get ready for this massive brain operation you're about to have. Blah, blah, blah. Stories. I can tell you of how I neglected me because I was so obsessed that my purpose in life, was to save the world. But you know how they say when you're in the plane, you have to put the oxygen mask first to you and then save everybody else. I'm only learning that lesson now. And now it's a little bit too late, you know? So that's why I'm sharing this with all of you to say, people, don't do this to yourselves, because we are the nurturers and we accepted that role to save the family, to nurture everybody. But how much time are you taking out of your work day to look after yourself? You know, I wouldn't look after myself at all. You know, it got to a stage that I didn't even know what I loved doing because my only purpose was to work and to raise a family. If you ask me what does Monica, little Monica, want, I would say, I don't know. For me, it's work and family. Wrong answer. You have to be able to answer, what does your little you, 22-year-old you, love doing? Do you love dancing? Do you love walking? Do you love massages? It took me a long time to learn what I love doing. And therefore, my sharing with all of you is don't make the same mistake I made.
And Monica, thank you for that. That's really precious advice. And I think many of us do make that mistake, unfortunately. And I guess the trap is, in corporate, if you are wanting to accelerate your career, especially as a woman, it's one of the things that you almost make that compromise, which is really not great, right? And and part of our learning, I guess, is also learning to care better for ourselves. It's not just always focused. I was chatting to someone that I'm mentoring recently and said, your goal should never just be about you and your professional life. It should be about you as a person. What do you need from a health point of view, from a wellness point of view, from a spiritual point of view? Because you are a whole person. You bring all of that to who you are and where you work. And so sometimes we are so driven by the professional goals or what we want to achieve in life. We forget to take care of the person who's going to deliver all of that. And it's also that thing of, I think, using our time wisely and not putting negativity and toxins in from news and all of those things, right? But actually being able to work with that. And thank you for reminding us that that's a caution we all need to perhaps stop and think about. As women, we sometimes don't take time for ourselves and actually, stop and smell the roses a little bit along the way. We're so focused always on delivery and making sure everyone in the family is okay that we sometimes need to take care of ourselves a little bit better as well. So I just want to say to both of you, thank you for your time. We know you have full schedules. It's been lovely listening in to the words of wisdom, and there's been a lot shared today that we can all furiously take some notes on and share and hopefully get to remind ourselves of things. So I do want to just see if there are any specific questions from the floor, since we are a small group and we might be able to actually allow for one or two questions. If anyone has a question they would like to pose to Monica or Jen, I'd love to ask you. You can unmute yourself and really just share with us. And if you've got any comments, love to hear from you. Because we are a smaller group, we can afford to do that a little bit differently. So anyone who would like to ask a question or share some comments and perspective on listening in today, love to invite you to do that.
Kerry, I saw there was a question earlier from Gail around asking Monica, how did she discover her why?
Oh, well, maybe Monica, that would be an interesting one.
While we're letting people think about questions, maybe that's worth delving into.
It's super personal, but in summary, I come from Uruguay. Uruguay is a South American country. In South America, the national sport is to be correct. Okay, so you're clever until you are found. Okay, so I thought that accounting was very creative because my dad used to sit at the table with the accountant, and the accountant would say, Mr. Singer, how would you like to, what would you like to show as fixed assets? What would you like to show as creditors, debtors? And I thought, wow, accounting is so cool. You invent the number. Little did I know that when I started varsity, I went to my dad and said, Dad, you're cooking the books. You're not allowed to do that. Imagine how that got accepted. I was not popular at home. So that's why from the beginning, and eventually my dad lost everything, of course, because eventually the government picked up that he was cooking the books. So the point is that because of that loss and disaster that I could see at university he was doing, I thought I need to do something completely different to help the world, not to cook the books, because eventually the truth comes out. And can you see why today I am thriving in blockchain technology? Because it's transparent, it's immutable. You cannot cook the books. And therefore, eventually, I found a way that the world will prevent this crazy thing that you think that you can invent numbers, because eventually it will come back to haunt you. So that's really the background why, as a little girl, I knew my why from the beginning,
That's great, Monica. And I think many of us enter the profession with the same thinking behind us. But it's really valuable to reflect on the lessons that shape us in our youth. Also, Erica has a question for you. What is the best resource that she can learn more about blockchain from?
First of all, if you want, please send me an email and I will send you, I've got a list, massive list of resources. You will be completely overwhelmed. But the first place you start, please, everybody, do me a favor. Just Google, put white paper creating Bitcoin. the paper appears, it's 7 pages, and you read what you can, because it's got also some mathematical formulas, but read the concept of what the creator of this Bitcoin was trying to achieve, because as a result of that white paper, everything has evolved. It's like reading Genesis in the Bible, it's the beginning. And therefore, if anybody wants my list, I definitely will send it to you. The list contains YouTubes, podcasts, newsletters, websites. It will overwhelm you, but you need to become very disciplined in choosing what you're going to listen to and choose from the list. But start with the white paper, Creating Bitcoin. If that resonates, then you are in the journey to learn about blockchain, but it will affect everybody eventually.
Thank you, Monica. And it's such a interesting, I think development in technology. And we do absolutely need to keep up to date on it. Like you said, it's going to impact every single one of us. And so understanding it and understanding more about it would be really important. Maybe a question, Jen, for you from Belinda Bedell. What is one key thing you would advise or want people to leave with, I guess, from the session today, or even talking perhaps about your business and perspective you have on that?
I think don't be afraid to do things that you don't know how to do. So, I'll give a concrete example. I was approached by a private equity company in Botswana earlier this year to sit on the board of a new private education group that they're formulating. I've never been on a board. So your first response is to say no, because I don't know how to do this, but how will you learn? And the person's approached you. Clearly, they think that you have something to value to add. And it's been a great experience for me. So for me, if allow yourself the opportunity to do things you don't know how to do. And I mean, literally, you can maybe get on a skateboard or whatever you feel would push you to change your mindset around that, like children do. That's why I love working with kids, because they challenge themselves all the time, and they're quite prepared to do stuff they've never done, with quite fearless. And this whole concept of risk and fear grows as you get older. I'm sure you see that with your own parents. And so I believe you do need to challenge yourself to do things you don't know how to do. How else will you learn?
And I love that, Jen. It's so true, right? And sometimes you just have to take the leap, right? And have the faith that you will find a way, and you have the resources today to tap into things always. I
And
had a situation at work recently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, it's somebody offered you this thing. They think you can do it. Why do you think you can't do it? Why are you blocking
Yeah,
yourself?
absolutely. Sometimes managing that little voice in your head that goes like, who are you to think you can do this, right? And it's such a powerful thing to just sometimes jump in and do it anyway. And I think all of us can say we've done something like that in the past, whether it was starting facilitating or I had an opportunity at work the other day to do a voiceover on something, and people said to me, "Oh, you did that." I'm like, "Yes." So it's a voiceover. It's not difficult. It's just sometimes be willing to do different things. You never know where that actually leads. And I think it comes back to Monica, something you said, which is courage. So sometimes it's just having that courage to silence the little voice and say, do you know what? I might be a little bit of fear, but do it anyway, and I'll figure it out as I go. And sometimes we just need to remember that.
Yes,
And
So
that's
to
why
also,
all of,
that's why men are successful.
yes, I wanted to
Men
say
do
that
this all the time.
yeah, they completely, and we suffer from the imposter syndrome, and and we have this concept that we need to be perfect before we do something. Men just do it, and then they bumble along, and they copy from women in general, and they delegate to women because we tend to do all the work for them. No, why? So stop that voice that says you can't do it. Every single job that I took in my life, I didn't know what I was doing, and then I learned, sink or swim. So stop with the perfectionist. Stop with this idea that you are an imposter. Fake it until you make it, and you will make it.
and such a valuable closing lesson, right? Sink or swim, fake it till you make it. I think sometimes we undervalue what we actually bring to the table, and it is about having the courage to just say, I can do this, and I will. And I think from both of you, we've seen that today, is that you can embrace new situations, do things very, very differently, and as a result, actually contribute massive value to the industries that you work in. So I just want to say to everyone, thank you for listening in with us. To Monica and Jen, I'm sure we could keep going for another hour and it will be as entertaining as the last hour. Thank you so much for your energy, for your insights, for sharing those lessons. I know that I've learned some stuff and it's always good. And I hope everyone online can take one or two nuggets from today's session and just say, wow, that's something that I'm going to write down and stick with. Um, and we'd love you to come along with us on our journey. We're going to be looking at how to sharpen your learning edge going forward. So we hope to have you on all our future webinars and podcasts with us. And to Monica and Jen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
valuable insights and lovely having you with us. And to all of our guests who listened in, thank you. And we hope this has energized you to have a super day and think about um, doing things a little bit differently. So thanks everyone for your time. Have a wonderful, wonderful week and day further. And lovely having you with us this morning.